if you look at it, what's interesting to me is if you look at society and the reasons for why society goes wrong, the occult or the spiritual way answers to those people. For instance, the people who don't belong in society find reverence in the occult spiritualism because spiritualism gives a sense of identity to people, and it's something that's unshakable. Like the identity that you can find in dabbling with something that's otherworldly and finding a new power in yourself away from this world, away from the enforcement or the policing of this world is, it's extravagant. So what the occult or the spiritual life actually appeals to me, is it fathers the idea of a humanity that is almost unlistened to the modern day world. Like you look at the scholastic potential of people and you look at the normal distribution, you see people with the lower end of the scholastic potential, you see people with more elite form of scholarly potential. And the people at the lower end of it are not going to be able to make it well in society, right? They're going to be falling out very easily. Maybe they're going to turn to drugs. Maybe they're going to be dropping out. Now, this is far reaching to the point where everybody pretty much search for meaning in their lives, no matter how dumb, stupid, or naive or indolent you might be, but you're going to be searching for some form of meaning. And at the same rate, you're going to be coaxed by society to form or fill a specific form or a seat of meaning to society. So part of your living, part of your lifestyle is partly going to be independent, but also going to be codependent or communally. And the communal aspect of this is going to cause problems. And what I keep seeing when I study the occult spiritualism is the spiritualism is quite depicted as a dark facet of humanity, where people shouldn't be trading, you shouldn't be dabbling with it. But at the same right, it is appealing to people who are not revered by society because of that dark anchoristic depiction of what the occult gives. There's kind of a dark facet to it, that a magnetic pull to people who physically feel that they can't be countered by societal means. And I think it's going to increasingly become more prominent as people become more alienated by society, more ostracized or chastised by society. They're going to be pulled to the occultic reality and to the occultic mass, because eventually it's going to be the case. And there is science has it. The fact that there's a cause and effect to everything in life. There's a cause to abuse. And I think if you look at people who have been spiritually harmed, the occult provides that way. It provides a doorway out of individualism that society cannot provide. And that is actually the hallmark to me of occultic science. It provides an individualism, an escape route for somebody who feels individually ostracized by society to find their own path. I mean, if you look at most people going to the occult, they aren't normal people. They are weirder, but they have this Faustian, if you look at it like the Tao of Faust, they have this Faustian prohibition to society. They have this Faustian Machiavellians to society in a way where it's not like they abound societal ethics, but they form a reverence to another world because society has banished them. So I think when you actually look at a cult and you study the spiritual side of things, you realize that the people who are drawn to it are people who have a sense of they have been hacked by society in a way. They have been decapitated by society in a way that they form a reverence to an independent form of thought. And occult is the best example of that. If you look at occult science or spirituality, it provides so much power and duty to a person. It deifies a personal transformation and development within a person that is beyond anything else. Like if you look at society as a cohesive form, there's very little maneuvering around it. Like there's very little mobility. So some people don't have, and I think this is going back to the general consensus of why people fall into the occult, is that some people don't have the societal mobility that other people have. They don't have the ability to find money. They don't have the ability to find social friendships or to establish themselves well in a societal lineage. And for such people, it's very clear why an independent form of life exists. And that's what the occult currently offers. Some occult paths are primarily dark, right? And the reason for this is obviously also that it appeals to some people. It appeals to a subset of people. And you do see that people who are more outcast tend to go to the quasi side of the left-hand path, whereas people who are more ingrained in society tries to stick with light work and the right-hand path. And I think there's a clear reason for this, that there is also hurt and harm that is done upon specific people and members of the society. And maybe the occult is also a way for us to beckon back at society in another way, where it is a form of catharsis rather than just a holistic understanding of the world. Maybe it's just a cathartic spell in a way, or a cathartic bridge, or a rite of passage that people use. Some people actually use to envenom themselves away from society's claws and find their own identity. I do think that the occult, in essence, can bring this form of identity to people who've otherwise been unidentified by society, and who's also been unabridged by society in a way where they could be understood. And we are societal beings, but what the occult essentially does is it can, and I'm not saying that there can be a false front, because it can definitely forge a false front to people. But I'm saying that it provides people with a spectral understanding of themselves that's different from. It provides people with a broader understanding than the spectral sphere of what they are in society. For instance, people have a codependence upon or a specific. There's definitely a specific codependence or a duty upon society to a person, but also from the person to society. And for some people, it feels like the duty is just one way, that their individual strength and tenacity goes one way, just to essentially imbright society. And it doesn't go the other way. They don't find that by serving society they get anywhere. And I think this is where so many people actually go on to the occult and search for higher meaning, because it gives people the spell book essentially to become more independent in their own forms of thought. So it's a very solipsistic path, but also very mosaic. So people find different facets and tapestries within faith or the occult by bridging the form of individualism with the sophistry of occultism. I mean, you find somebody who's essentially relying completely on themselves to embroil their own spiritual path. And I think this is essentially what the occult offers. But it's also a danger. So it's almost like a sword that very few people can wield and can use honorably. And at the same rate, you have a responsibility upon yourself to wield the sword in a cohesive fashion, and that's not detrimental to yourself to others. And I think this is going to be the skill that many people in the cult has to learn. So I think this is essentially why people are drawn to the cult. They're drawn to the cult because they have been ostracized from societal roles, and they have been uncrowned or dethroned. And they find that crown or recrowning or that rechristening back in the occultic law, where they can find themselves. They're going to find that through the spiritual transformation, they can become somebody. They have the annals of personal transformation within the annals of occultic science, and within that they can find a transformative or an alchemical transformation or a transmugative process to a better self. And they can append their own personal transformation to however they wish in whichever way. And I think this is what gives people the law of personal transformation in the occultic worlds, and why people turn to it. So I do think that the occult appeals to people who have been harmed or hurt, and people who have been ostracized from society. And the main reason for this is because society presents an expectation onto individuals. And there are many individuals who don't really feel that society gives enough. And so many people become completely untrusted with what society provides them. They don't trust, and they start to demonize society for that. And then it's easy to kind of jump into the ad hoc form of demonizing the whole of society in a way, where you feel that the only power that you might have is upon you. So you kind of look at it very individualistically, very solipsistically, where you start to believe that society has lied to you, and you now got to either get back to society or form your own process of how to live and how to survive in this world, this big bag world that everybody's throwing you into. And so it's easy for such a person then to delve into other areas or mosaic into other ways, or consort into other forms of being, such that provides that person with individualism and freedom for some part. And I mean, how much more can't you find freedom within the annals of a philosophy where individualism is the form of godheadness? Like, the occult provides the ability of knowledge as a form of hidden transformation, as opposed to societal values that's scholastically based. So people who fail on the scholastic basis can still find individual transformation with art or the occultic sciences, because it provides a way of self-understanding rather than scholastic potential. So the more you understand, the more you kind of want to, and it is like a positive feedback loop where the more involved you become, the stronger you become in your science, and it's also going to be transformative. It might crystallize into other forms of personal growth, financial growth, or other means of even societal worth. And of course, you're going to be dictating as the occultic practitioner, but the occult has an answer for people who are unanswered societally. Like if you look at people who are unanswered societally, you look at people who failed at school, the guy who couldn't get a girlfriend, for instance. The occult provides a way for that person to re-establish themselves in an echelon where they are worthy. So they're jumping from an echelon of a man to an echelon of angels and angelic beings and spirits. People who can't, or those beings who can't reject them. Like the rejection isn't as far-fetched. They feel they have the power now to work with a higher set of principles that society cannot physically bottle them with. And for that person, it's clearly, being almost like a kid in a candy store scenario. And at the same time, you're the bull in the china shop, because it's like you have all this power, but you can break everything. But it provides at least totem pole of potential for somebody who is otherwise robbed of potential because societally or scholastically that person didn't fit the bill. And now they can. Now they have a second chance, and their second chance is in the world that many people are afraid of. Like society banishes this dark side, because the dark side to society is societally corrupted. But that's a good thing for occultists. The occultist knows it's societally corrupt, but they don't care about society. They want to corrupt society. So for them, it's a self-serving bias, because the occult provides this egomaniacal response to a tyrannical form or a tyrannical boss who've never served you well. So because you've been man-able, you can now kind of get back to it by a better understanding by which the tyrannical boss now fears. So you almost look at the Joker analogy here, the Joker archetype, where nobody goes to the Joker because the Joker is very dark and very grim. And yet again, the Joker provides a personal type where it's the unbounded, bottom where, you can fall. It's like the infinite pit, the bottomless pit where somebody falls into and they lose all their morality. And at the same time, I'm not saying an occultist has no morality, but it gives a specific specter of the iconoclast is someone who goes against God and whatever God taught. And this is kind of what the occultist does, is the blasphemer. The iconoclast goes against what society taught that person to be true, or a behavior construct that they now go against because they see that whatever was taught to them is from a tyrannical deity or a tyrannical sub-force or a demiurge, as they call it. And they can find holiness elsewhere, where society, like what society calls dark, is to them their light. Because society is called light where they found darkness, and it's kind of the inversion of that. We will find light where society calls darkness, and that's kind of how somebody can bottle up in the occult forms. So the occult can provide a lot of solace to people who have been hurt societally, and also people who don't feel that they belong. It can provide a new meaning of for people, and a new world for people to go into that society could never give them. And you can think about the illiterate man who finally become a spiritualist and start talking to spirits, and just by their will, they can do whatever they wanted to do all the time, but they don't have to have a scholastic potential or a scholastic feat to be able to do what they do now. They simply have to have a will to do it. That's the difference. They can sacrifice their will to trespass into the darkness for answers without having intelligence or scholastic potential to be able to do that. And that allure alone is enough to drive people to the pit of the occult, essentially, because that provides a way out for people who don't need to really rely on anything supernally to actually coexist with their own innate understanding of whatever it might be, or their unfolding of the potential. It can simply just be will itself. And the only thing you have to get will is essentially to be able to be willing to get it. And that willingness is a small price to pay for the power that you're going to get through that. That's kind of what drives people to the occult, in the allure of it. And, in a way, why people are imbibed within these philosophies.